Hi, I'm Christy and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm here with my September reading wrap-up. All right, so for the month of September, I ended up reading 35 books for the month. And so today we're just gonna quickly review them all. I'm gonna let you know what I thought about all of them and get into all of the things. September felt like a super packed month. Like I blinked and it was already over. So much happened in September. I'm loving being in fall. It's my favorite season of the year and just all the good things. I had a bunch of book club reads, a read along, the Wallflowers read along that I'm a co-host for. I also co-hosted the historical fiction readathon. So just a super packed month and I can't wait to chat about all of the books that I read this month. Not a ton of favorites, but I'm excited to talk about them regardless. As always, if you ever want to see more of my thoughts or my full reviews on any of the books that I read, I do review every single book that I read on Goodreads, and so you can always get to my Goodreads through the link in the description of all of my videos. So with that out of the way, let's get into the 35 books that I read this month. So first up, I was sent an ARC copy of Bitter Truth by the authors. So this is co-written by Meredith Wild and Jillian Leota, and this book I ended up giving 4 stars to. This is my first book by either of these authors, and this is the first book in their new Hawthorne Vines series, I want to say is what it's called. It's kind of centered around this family's vineyard. So basically in this one, we follow the heroine. She was an aspiring singer who lived in LA for I think like a decade, and her dreams are kind of broken. So she ended up leaving the city and is going back home to her hometown, which is where her family owns a vineyard. And so she's there to kind of help her brother open up this new restaurant there. When she gets there, her car breaks down. She runs into this really hot guy who's the hero, and he ends up helping her out, but they go their separate ways, even though there's like sparks flying between them. And then later on that same night, they run into one another when she shows up at her family's property, and the hero is there as well. So she finds out that the hero is actually the newly hired chef for the restaurant that she's supposed to be opening up with her brother. And then when she gets there as well, she finds out that her brother kind of told her that she'd be helping run the business with him, but instead he's kind of like, can you just work the floor? Like you're not here for the business side of things. And so it kind of goes from there. This one we get a lot of family dynamics with the heroine and her kind of moody brother, their father as well. The hero is kind of like a little bit pushing back from the heroine too for his own reasons. So there is a little bit of an emotional element to the story as well. Like I said, it was my first read by either of these authors and I enjoyed it. I thought the writing was really solid. This one is available on KU with the read and listen feature, so I do love to see that. So yeah, 4 stars for this one. Next I read When She's Wary by Ruby Dixon. So this is, I think, book like 11. Yes, 11 in her Rizdaverse series. So basically this is a sci-fi romance series that takes place on this Rizda 3 planet, which is a farming planet. And so there are human heroines there, and then the heroes are usually like aliens of some sort. And so that is definitely the case in this one as well. This series has slowly been getting audiobooks, and so that's when I've been reading and listening to them. They are available like on Libby and Hoopla, a lot of library resources, so I love to see that with Ruby Dixon books. I'm a Ruby Dixon stan, and so I had a good time with this one and gave it 4 stars. This one is a novella part of the series, which I feel like I've enjoyed the novellas more in this series just because they're like the perfect bite-size amount of story that I want with the characters. So in this one, the heroine is the grumpy one. She's very scowly. She has some things and trauma that has happened in her past, which is kind of common with this entire series. There's a lot of like trauma in different characters' backstories, so just know that going in. But anyways, the heroine is just like very scowly, kind of keeps to herself, does her own thing. And then the hero, he is kind of her neighbor or lives nearby with his brother and his brother's new mate. And so he's seen them happy. He kind of wants a mate of his own and to get out of their house because he's tired of hearing them having a little bit too much fun. And so he wants to find a mate of his own, and he's really drawn to the heroine. And so he shows up kind of to her house to kind of get to know her, and she assumes he's trespassing and immediately ties him up. So love that for a meet cute. I really enjoy this one. I love how the heroine is the grumpy one and trying to push the hero away, and he's just like happy with anything that she's gonna give him. Any little chance that he can be around her, he's gonna take it. So when she starts giving him like little errands to run for her into town to get supplies and things like that, he will gladly go and do that. So he does that for like months, goes and gets her supplies and comes back, and then he slowly realizes that she's just kind of like making up things for him to go and do so that he comes back to her because she wants to get to know him as well. But she has some like walls up and doesn't know how to just come out and say that. So instead she's having him run these errands for her. So yeah, this one is a really fun time on audio. It's a novella, 4 stars. Next up, I read The Pumpkin Spice Cafe by Lori Gilmore. So this one was blowing up all over. I think it actually came out last year, but it was super popular again this year and just all over the place. So I decided to jump into this one because this one was also on Hoopla for me. So I decided to give it a go. And so this one I gave kind of like 3.5/4 stars. This book, if you're a fan of Gilmore Girls, it was totally written for us, which that is kind kind of why I jumped into it. It's kind of described as a cozy mystery, but I would say the mystery element is very, very light. But for the small town vibes, the grumpy sunshine, the kind of opposites attract with the heroine being the city girl, the hero being the small town boy, and just kind of all the dynamics of all the side characters and the town, that is honestly what I was here for. So it delivered on exactly what I wanted. Like I said, the audio was available through my library, so it was just like an easy, quick listen, and I had a good time with it. I think the cover is adorable, and I can't wait to check out more in this series that are coming out because I feel like they're all just gonna be like a fun, cozy time. So yeah, 4 stars for this one. Next, I read The Next Best Fling by Gabriel, and this one I ended up giving 3 stars to. I had really high hopes for this one. It sounded really good. I really liked the cover. It is a debut by a new author. There's plus size characters in it. It sounded really, really good, but I sadly didn't love this one. Like I said, I gave it 3 stars. It was a very messy, and not in the type of like messy way that I enjoy with characters. Like I feel like these characters just needed some therapy and they were just super toxic, and I don't know, it was a hot mess. So let me set this one up for you. So basically in here, the heroine is in love with her best friend, and then the hero is her best friend's older brother that happens to be in love with his brother's fiance. So very complicated. And so the hero at one point is wanting to break up the wedding, and the heroine steps in and is like, no, you can't do that. Oh my God. And so she kind of decides to help him out because she realizes that he's in love with the fiance of his brother, who, like I said, she's in love with his brother. And so she's like, we have a lot in common, without telling him that. So they end up kind of accidentally faking a relationship, slash everybody thinks they're in a relationship. And so they kind of just go into it to try to help themselves get over the people that they're interested in. So the whole time the heroine, she knows who the hero is interested in, but with the hero, the heroine never tells him that she's interested in his brother, so that's kind of a secret kept throughout the story. He knows that she's kind of interested in somebody and trying to get over them, but she never says directly who it is. There's also some messiness with the hero's brother, slash the guy that the heroine is interested in. He's kind of been like stringing her along all these years, and there's just like a lot of toxicity with kind of all of these 4 core characters that we follow. So yeah, it was just kind of like too messy for too long for me. I wanted these characters honestly to just get some help through all of this. Like I said, the whole secret situation with the heroine not telling the hero who she's actually interested in for a long time. There's some drama with the hero and his brother. So I don't know. I feel like since it was the author's debut, I can see the potential for sure there with the writing. So I might check out more in the future from them. We'll see. But yeah, this one, 3 stars. All right, next up is another 3-star for me. So this is Outdrawn by Deanna Gray. This one, again, I had high hopes for. I had heard great things about it. It's kind of a Rivals setup. It's a sapphic romance, and it sounded really, really good. But it was just kind of dull for me, and I gave it 3 stars. In this one, the 2 heroines have actually been rival artists since college, and now they're working for the same company together. And so they have to kind of work together through all of their problems and things like that. And so it kind of goes from there. This one was recently released on audio, and that is how I listened to it because it was available on Libby for me. So I don't know if it was just the audiobook that didn't work for me or just the story in general. But yeah, had high hopes, but just was 3 stars. Next, I had an ALC of Meant for Gabriel by Natasha Madison. So this is, I think, book 4, yes, in her Meant for series. So I've been listening to this entire series, and there's some hits and misses in there for me. And this one was more of a hit. So this one I gave 4 stars to. This one is a small town, a single dad, opposites attract. It has an accidental pregnancy as well. So in the beginning of the story, we see the heroine getting ready for her own wedding. I think she's like even wedding dress shopping, and on that day is when she finds out that her fiance has been cheating on her for years. And so to kind of get away from that, she ends up going to this small town, and I think she goes to a bar and she meets the bartender who is the hero, and they hook up. So it's supposed to be just like a one-night stand hookup situation. They go their separate ways, but then of course later she finds out that she's pregnant. Like I said, the hero is already a single dad, and so it kind of goes from there because they live in 2 different places. How's it going to work out? Then they realize they have a lot of friends in common as well, so they're kind of around each other all the time. I did like in here how the hero was totally in right from the start. Love to see that. So yeah, it was a fun time, especially on audio, so I gave it 4 stars. All right, next up I read Love and Other Conspiracies by Mallory Marlowe. So this was one of my favorites of the month. This one I gave 4.5 stars to and had such a fun time with it. This one is also a debut by an author. I think it was published through Berkeley. Yes, through Berkeley. And so it's a traditionally published book. Sometimes with the traditionally published romances, I go in with kind of lower expectations, but this one really blew me away. And like I said, I had a fun time with it. Basically in here, the hero has a podcast where he does like conspiracy theories and talks about monsters and Bigfoot and kind of things like that. And the heroine in here is a producer for a web series. And so basically she ended up having a complicated relationship with a previous show she was producing. And so she needs a new show to produce. So one night, late at night, she's watching or listening to podcasts, and she finds the hero's podcast, looks him up, and she's like, oh my God, this guy's hot too. Like, I definitely am interested because because this show has me invested. Like, I'm not even a conspiracy theorist, and I'm totally invested in his plot lines. And so she ends up reaching out to him and offers him a job to produce a web show for his podcast. And so when they meet and she puts him in front of a camera, basically he kind of freezes up and is super just like uncomfortable. It's not coming off super seamlessly. And so kind of all of the charm and charisma he had while doing the podcast over just audio is not translating very well to on camera. And so she decides to step in on camera with him and sits down and kind of like lets him talk to her about things, or she will kind of just like banter with him and be like, well, I don't believe that. Like, have you ever heard this theory? Kind of things like that. And so it's super fun. Their chemistry is really natural. I love the bantery elements to this one. And so basically all the other producers end up seeing that example of the show that they put out, and everybody's like, oh my God, you guys need to be co-hosts because you're perfect. The chemistry is so sizzling together. And so it ends up being them working together on the podcast. And like I said, she's a non-believer in all the things that he believes in. So that makes it super fun. They end up going on a lot of adventures together as well, kind of on the road while they're working on the show, and they kind of stay at like a haunted place at one point. And so there's only one bed, and just kind of all of those fun moments. Like I said, I just love this one. It grabbed my attention from the start. The hero is adorable and nerdy. He has a cat, and I just loved him. I loved how much he is into the heroine. There is some emotional depth to the characters as well, which I appreciated. So yeah, highly recommend this one. If you haven't read it, I definitely recommend that you do. It was so much fun. Next up is Rally by Daphne Perry. So this is the latest in her Treasure State Wildcat series, which is a sports romance series. This is book 3. They're kind of standalones, but exist in the same college kind of setting. And so this one I ended up giving 3.5/4 stars to. This one is a college sports romance with an accidental pregnancy. Basically in here, the hero and the heroine, they meet. The heroine is trying to go get out of town, go camping, and her car breaks down or something. And so the hero ends up helping her out with her tire, and then he ends up inviting her to his family's property where he's camping, and she decides to join him. So while they're there that night, they end up talking and realizing that they go to the same college. He is a football player, which she has like no idea about sports, so she has no idea who he is. And so they just kind of chat and talk. They're both kind of in complicated relationships at the time. And so nothing happens between them that night. They literally just chat and realize that they both need to ditch their respective partners, and then they go their separate ways. And then a month later, they run into each other again at a bar. This time they do hook up, and that is when it leads into this accidental pregnancy. This one I really enjoyed the found family aspect of it all. The heroine has only kind of had herself and her sister that she's taken care of over the years. So the hero's family, especially his parents, totally take her in, treat her as one of their own, and just like kind of love on her and support their relationship and the pregnancy and kind of all of those things. So yeah, I just loved how the hero and the heroine were both just kind of there for one another. The audiobook just really worked for me as well. It's narrated by Jason Clark, like say less. So yeah, I had a good time with this one at 3.5/4 stars. So next I read a cozy mystery, so Murder at the Pumpkin Pageant by Darcy Hannah. So this was the cozy mystery book club pick for, I think it's Teacups and Murder, I want to say. Possibly. I always get book club names wrong, but I know it is run by my friend Samantha from Books with Samantha and Spencer from Intentionally Bookish. So this was their seasonal book club pick, and I was like, yes, please, because I'm trying to get into cozy mysteries more, and so I wanted to give this one a go, and it was on Hoopla as well, so I jumped into it, and this one I really enjoyed. I gave it 4 stars. This one was just a quick, easy listen. I really liked the characters and the story and the plot kind of going on. The murder mystery element of it all I wasn't as invested in, but I had a good time with the characters. Basically in this one, the heroine has purchased a lighthouse that she's turned into her house / a bake shop as well. And everybody kind of warned her that the lighthouse is haunted. So there's kind of like this lighthouse ghost that she just kind of deals with. So the heroine's best friend is an influencer / podcaster, I want to say as well. So for Halloween, she tells the heroine that she invited a professional ghost hunting team to come and stay at the lighthouse and to film a podcast episode with her there. And so while they're filming this podcast, it's streaming live, there ends up being a murdered body that shows up. And so it kind of goes from there. So like I said, I really enjoyed the characters in this one. The whole like murder reveal I wasn't here for / didn't really enjoy, but the rest of it, the setting, the plot, I kind of enjoyed it. So yeah, I'm excited to check out maybe more from this author in the future. I give this one 4 stars. Next, I just wanted to continue on and be in this kind of like fall mood. So I read The Rivals of Casper Road. This is by Roan Parrish, and this is part of their Garnet Run series, which is an adorable kind of like small town setting in Wyoming. I believe they're all MM, could be wrong. The one I read last year was set around Christmas, which was really fun. So this one is a Halloween one that I wanted to get to. So this one I didn't love as much as the holiday one last year, and this one I gave 3 / 3.5 stars. Basically in here, one of the heroes moves to this small cutesy neighborhood and finds out about this huge like Halloween decorating contest that happens annually. And so he's like, oh, I'm for sure going to be participating. So that's when he kind of meets the other hero. And so he's like, by the way, this is my competition. I've won it 6 years in a row. Like, good luck. And so they kind of become like rivals, but they're also into one another. So yeah, it was just a quick one. It basically goes from rivalry to prank wars to the heroes getting together. So it was sweet. It has some spice. I really love the whole like kind of autumnal setting and mood and Haven vibe, and the little neighborhood with like all the other side characters was fun. So yeah, 3.5 stars for this one. I think the whole series is available on Hoopla, at least for me, so definitely check there if you're interested in any of them. This next one is Cash by Jessica Peterson. I was seeing this one all over my Instagram feed, and so I decided to jump into it, see what it was all about, see if the hype was real. So yeah, I had actually a good time with this one and gave it 4 stars. This one is a small town opposites attract, where she's a city girl, he's a country boy. It has that cowboy western vibe to it as well, which I would say if you enjoy A Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker, you'd probably like this book as well. It kind of has a similar vibe or setup, or that's what I was getting from it when I was reading. So basically in this one, it starts off with the heroine. Her father has recently passed away. They were estranged, so she didn't have really a great relationship with him, but her father was super duper wealthy. He owned this like huge ranch and would just kind of send her money throughout the years instead of spending time with her, and so she has a lot of hurt and trauma from that. And so basically her parents were married when they were younger. Her mother decided that the country life was not for her. She hated being on the ranch, hated everything about it. She was a city girl to her heart. So she gave the heroine's father an ultimatum at the time. It was basically like, come with me, let's move to Dallas, to the actual city instead, and we can stay married. And he was like, no, I own this like ranch. It's my family's ranch. Like, that's not happening. That's not me. So they got a divorce. So she took her daughter, they lived in the city, raised her in the city, and things kind of fell apart with her relationship with her father from there. So yeah, it's years later now, and the heroine is in the middle of trying to get her cowboy boot business up and running with her business partner. And so she's like, ooh, I could use the money from this ranch. I can sell it, get the money, and put that into my company. So basically the heroine arrives at the will reading, and she is just there assuming that she's going to get all the money. So when she gets to the will reading, she ends up seeing this other kind of cowboy guy there who is the hero. And so he's kind of mad at her, and she doesn't realize why or like understand why, because she's like, do I even know this guy? And so she's like, also, why is he at the will reading? And so the will is read, and she does inherit the ranch and like all the land and the assets and the millions of dollars. So she's like, perfect, I'm gonna sell it all. And then the lawyer's like, actually, there's like this little bit of a caveat in there that before you can inherit any of the money or touch the money or earn money from the ranch, you have to live and work at the ranch for 1 full year, like live there and also work actively on the business side of things. And so she's kind of annoyed with that. And at the same time, the hero slash the guy who's also in there at the will reading hops up and he's like, this is totally wrong. I was supposed to be left the ranch. I've been the foreman for the ranch for a decade. I was told I was going to be left the business and all the money. And so it kind of goes from there, where the hero and the heroine kind of start off with this like kind of hate to love situation, but basically it's that the hero doesn't know everything about the heroine, and it kind of goes from there with her having to figure out if she's going to live at the ranch or what, and of course she does. And so it's just kind of them working together, realizing that they both made a lot of assumptions about one another in the beginning, and I just really had a good time with it. Like I said, I gave it 4 stars, maybe like more 4.5 stars that I'm talking about it, because I did really enjoy it. There's an emotional element to it as well, because like I said, the heroine's going through everything with her feelings and her complicated feelings and relationship with her estranged father who's now gone, and then the hero as well. He was going away to college, and basically when he was 19, his parents suddenly passed away, and so he had to return home, quit college, come back and raise his 4 younger brothers. And so he was left also with this huge debt that his family's ranch business was in, and so basically he didn't want to lose his 6th generation family ranch. And so the heroine's father is the one who kind of took the hero and his brothers in and was like, hey, I want to help you out. We're like neighboring ranchers or whatever. Like, I'm going to teach you about the business, give you a paycheck, and help you kind of afford to eventually fix up your own ranch and know where to go from there. So yeah, the more I talk about it, I think 4.5 stars. I had a really good time with this one, and I'm excited for the rest of the series because I think we're going to be following the hero's brothers. So I can't wait, because we get a lot of the side characters as well as in this one. So yeah, one of those that was all over my Instagram feed, and I'm glad I picked it up though, because it was a fun time and it was actually like a well-deserved hyped book. So yeah, 4.5 stars for this one for me. Oh, also this month I read a couple books for authors that I work for or working on projects for, and so I'm not going to talk about those because some were beta reads or some were just reads that I was doing content polls for, so they were for work purposes, but they count towards my reading goal for the month. So yeah, anyways, let's move on to the next books. Next up, I had an ALC of All Too Well by Corinne Michael. So this one is the first one in her Ember Falls series, and this one I sadly didn't love as much as I was hoping to. The cover is stunning. I loved the tropes in this one, but then the like execution of the book, it just didn't really hit for me, so I gave it 3/3.5 stars. This one, it sounded so good. It is a small town, brother's best friend, a single dad, grumpy sunshine, it's always been you, romance. I think the hero in here was a firefighter as well, and basically they have known one another for years. Like I said, the hero and the heroine's brother are friends. She was kind of friends with the hero as well. They both share like a little moment in the past that they've never really gotten over, and so they've been thinking about it for years, and now it's kind of maybe their chance to see where things go. This one I just expected a lot more from. I just really didn't connect to the characters or the story in this one. This has that kind of like angsty, unrequited love, but maybe now is their chance type of vibe, which maybe like Unrequited Love love is not my favorite thing. I don't know. This one as well has a lot of things to do with military, which isn't my favorite things to read. Basically in here, both of their fathers were in the military and it kind of like affected their lives and then moving around and things like that. It's just not my favorite thing to pick up and read. I was raised as a military brat. That was like my entire childhood life until I became an adult, so not my favorite thing. But anyways, I'm excited to see where maybe the rest of the series goes. Maybe the next ones I'll connect more with the characters. I'm not sure. So yeah, 3.5 stars for this one. Like I said, I'm a co-host for the Wallflowers read-along, and so our book for this month was It Happened One Autumn. So here is this gorgeous step back. I loved this one. This is of course the Wallflowers series by Lisa Kleypas, which is one of my favorite series of all time. I love this historical romance series so much. So this is technically book 2 in the series if you're following just like the main 4 core friends that we're following in the Wallflowers series. And this one I had a fun time with. This whole series is a reread for me, so this one I gave 4.5 stars to, just like I did originally. This is the romance between Lillian and Marcus. So Marcus is an earl and Lillian is an American heiress who is in town with her family. Her father's trying to do business with Marcus. Lillian is just very headstrong. She says whatever she wants. She doesn't fit into society because she's from America, and so Marcus just kind of can't stand her and is always kind of annoyed with her, but he's also really pulled to her and can't figure out why. And so it's kind of their story in here. I just enjoy both of these characters so much. I love all of the Wallflower series. Lisa Kleypas is one of my favorite authors, and it has been just so much fun. I think this is my 4th time rereading the series. It's always a fun time. I love these characters and this series and this world so much. It's been so fun getting to co-host this read-along just to talk about it with friends on our live chats every month, as well as hear from people who are reading it for the first time. It's so much fun. So yeah, highly recommend this series. Love it so much. 4.5 stars. All right, so next I jumped into a new release in September, which was Temptation Trails by Claire Kingsley. This is the 3rd book in her Haven Brothers series. So this is a small town romantic suspense series, and the first book in the series I absolutely loved. The second book didn't work for me at all, but this 3rd book worked for me again, and I loved it as well and gave it 4 stars. This one is small town romantic suspense, and we have a single dad hero. So basically the heroine is a baker, and she kind of wants a fresh start to life, and so it worked out at the perfect time that her aunt was retiring, and her aunt owned a bakery in the small town, and so the heroine decides to move there and take over the bakery business. The hero is a deputy in the town, and he's a single dad to his teenage son, and so his son at the beginning of the story ends up stealing, I think, some cookies from the heroine's bakery, and so the hero finds out. So he's like, you're gonna go return the cookies to the bakery owner and apologize and all the things. And when he gets there, he sees the heroine, and then he realizes who she is, because at the beginning of the story, they were supposed to have a kind of blind date set up, and he never showed for the date. Granted, he did tell her he wasn't gonna make it because he is a deputy and he got called on this cold case type situation that was maybe like heating back up. And so he told her he wouldn't be able to make it, but she kind of looked at it as like, maybe this isn't the time for me to get into a relationship. And so she's like, you know what? Fine with that. I can focus on my career instead. And so it kind of picks up from there, where he runs into her and he realizes, oh my God, that's who you were. And he's kind of connected to her and he kind of wants more. And so it kind of goes from there. I really enjoyed seeing the cold case that the hero was working on. That kind of added to the romantic suspense element of this story. The hero and the heroine, their relationships is very like fast and easy, and they just like connected, and you can see they were perfect for one another. I do feel like the heroine and the hero's son though, like his teenage son, he starts to work for the heroine. They kind of have more of a kind of like friendship, bond, relationship. I feel like that was showcased more than maybe the hero with the heroine, which I kind of wanted to see a little bit more there. So that's why I ended up giving this one 4 stars. But like I said, solid, really enjoyed it. All right, so next up was the historical fiction readathon. So I read 7 books for the historical fiction readathon. We had a whole week of historical fiction books, which I just love historical fiction books. So getting to read so many that were on my TBR for years was so much fun, and getting to try some new to me authors, all the things. I had such a good time with this readathon. Tori and I already can't wait to do another round of it, maybe in the new year. And so we're just so excited for all things historical fiction. That's why we have our historical fiction book club as well, which is Leave It to the Pros. But anyways, so the 7 books that I read, I have a whole video dedicated to my wrap up for the readathon already. So I'll link that in the description of the video, and I'll just quickly give you a rundown and my maybe star ratings here just to get through them. All right, so first up I read The Berry Pickers by Amanda Peters. This one I gave 3.5/4 stars to. I had this one on my TBR for the longest time. I know it got a ton of awards last year, and I saw it at bookstores all over. I really love the very like graphic, bold cover of the blueberries. So basically in here, this is told in the 1960s as well as present day, and it's like 50 years later, where this little girl had gone missing in the blueberry fields while her family was working in Maine. And so we get dual timeline here, and we're following 2 characters throughout their entire lives. So there's a lot of trauma and healing. This one is the debut by the author as well, and so I enjoy the writing. I'm excited to pick up more from them in the future. This one just had moments that worked for me and didn't work for me. I will say the end had me teary-eyed, so there is that. So yeah, 3.5/4 stars. Next I read Next Year in Havana by Chanel Clayton, and this one I had such a good time with. I gave it 4.5 stars. stars. I really loved this one. In fact, I wanted to like drop my TBR and read the rest of the series for the readathon, but I didn't do that. But I have since continued on with the rest of the series and I'm having a good time as well. But anyways, this one, yeah, 4.5 stars. Basically, this takes place with dual timeline as well. So we're in current day for the book. So I think it's like 2016-ish. And we're following this woman who lives in Miami, and her grandma recently passed away, who she had a really close relationship with. And she knows about her grandmother's days that her grandmother and her family escaped from Cuba, I want to say like the 1950s, and came to the US. And so she's a travel writer as well, and she wants to go back there, spread her grandmother's ashes, as well as see all these like beautiful places that her grandmother always told her about. And so she ends up doing that. And so we're following the dual timeline. We see her grandmother's story back in the 1940s, 50s in Havana with her family. Her father was like a sugar baron, and they were very wealthy and privileged, and they didn't realize a lot of things that were going on with the political unrest in the country. And so it kind of follows her story as well as her relationship with maybe somebody a little bit rebellious. And it kind of goes from there with, we follow that storyline, and then we go back to the granddaughter story where we're following her in present day in Cuba, and she is having a relationship of her own kind of heat up, as well as learning some things about her family's past. I just really enjoyed this. It was so fast paced and good. And like I said, I wanted to continue on to the rest of the series, which I did. So yeah, 4.5 stars for this one. Next, I read The Rose Arbor by Rhys Bowen. So this is a historical fiction mystery where again, we have dual timeline. I think it's from the 1960s as well as back to World War II, 1940s. And so basically in here, the heroine works for a London newspaper. She writes the obituaries, but she wants to get into the newsroom. So she finds out this case about a missing girl, and it kind of leads her back to this small town in the countryside where it supposedly happened. And when she's there, she uncovers a bunch of other cases of missing girls that dates back to when the Blitz happened during World War II. And it kind of goes from there. So kind of enjoyed it, but also didn't love it. I gave it 3 stars. This one is available on Kindle Unlimited though. So there is that if you want kind of a historical fiction mystery on KU. All right, so then my next book for the readathon was my favorite read of the readathon, my favorite read of the month as well. So this is Homegoing by Ya Jessie. And this one I loved so much. And I had to go and get a physical copy of it because it was so good. So yeah, 5 stars for this one. This one had been on my TBR for so long, and I totally regret not getting to it sooner, but I'm also so glad I did during this time because maybe I just picked it up at the right time as well, or like when I was meant to pick it up, I should say. So this one, it basically spans 300 years. It's this epic family saga where we start off with 2 half-sisters in Ghana in the 1700s, and we see how their lives go. And so basically in here, we're following generations of this family all the way up into present day in Harlem. And so basically in here, it was super unique because each character that we follow, they only have 1 chapter. So we get the 2 half-sisters at the beginning of the story. Each of them get a chapter in Ghana, 1700. One of them ends up getting married off to a wealthy Englishman, and she lives life in the Cape Coast castle. And then unbeknownst to her, her sister ends up getting stolen and thrown into the dungeons of the castle. And from there, she ends up getting abducted, sold into slavery, shipped off to the US. And it kind of follows both of their chapters first. And then from there, we jump to their descendants' story. So then it's the next generation's story for the next 2 chapters. And then from there, we jump to the next descendants and so forth down the line, if that makes sense. It's basically like a family tree in literary form where we're following each descendant's own chapter. And this one was just so good. I loved the writing. It's basically like a collection of short stories where you're getting all these different descendants' stories. And you see how overall they're all kind of going through similar things, even though they're in different places, different times. There's like something that connects all the stories together, which was just like really powerful. Obviously a ton of content warning in here. I feel like that's kind of common for historical fiction books in general. I love the writing style. This is the author's debut, and I'm just really excited to read more from them now in the future and pick up more of their books. So yeah, love this one. 5 stars, highly recommend. All right, and then for the readathon, we had a group pick, which was The Rose Code by Kate Quinn. And so this one I gave 3.5/4 stars to. This one was the second book that I've read from Kate Quinn this year. So first up, I read The Briar Club, which was her newest release back in August, and I really enjoyed that one. I like it more than this one, but this one I feel like was super solid as well. And there was moments I liked, but also some things that didn't work for me super well. So that's like why I said I gave it 3.5, but rounded up to 4 because I do love this author's writing. So yeah, basically this follows 3 women, and we are in dual timelines. So we are in World War II during the height of it, and the 3 heroines are code breakers while working at Bletchley Park with the Enigma. And then we also follow them post World War II, where 2 of the ladies get a letter from one of their friends and she needs help, and they kind of have to figure out why, and there's a bit of a mystery, and it kind of goes from there. So yeah, 3.5/4 stars. You can see we have a whole live show about this one. I talk more about it in my historical fiction readathon wrap up as well. Then with the historical fiction, we had kind of like a checklist novelist, and you could read historical romance as well. And so I needed to read Lord of Scoundrels by Loretta Chase because it was the Historical Hellions book club pick that month, which I'm a co-host for, along with Jess from Peace Love Books and Samantha from Books with Samantha. And so this was a reread for me, and I absolutely loved it all over again. I gave this book 5 stars originally. It's just such an iconic historical romance, and I loved it again the second time as well. Basically in here we follow Jessica Trent, which is the baddest of badass heroines. I love her so much. She is ruthless and just goes for things and says it how it is, puts the hero in his place, which he definitely needs at times. And so I just love her. She's one of my favorite heroines of all time. So this is a enemies to lovers setup. There's a kind of compromised marriage of convenience that happens. The hero is one of my favorite types of heroes, which is a broken hero who he has a lot of trauma from his past. And so it definitely has affected the way that he is, the way he talks to people, treats people, and the heroine kind of teaches him how to be and puts him in his place a lot. And so it is their story. I love his character growth. I just love this couple so much. So yeah, 5 stars for Lord of Scoundrels by Loretta Chase. All right, and then my last read for the historical fiction readathon is The Last Secret of Lily Adams by Sarah Blades. So this one I picked up because it is a new release. It's on KU with a read and listen feature as well, which I love an audiobook. So this worked out super well. I picked it up and I gave it 4 stars. So this one is a debut by the author, so I can't wait to see what they write in the future. This is set around kind of like the golden age of Hollywood and has dual timeline again, where we're following the main character, and it's her grandmother who was the kind of golden age starlet. And so her grandmother has since passed away, and the heroine ends up looking back into this mystery that her grandmother kind of leaves in her diary, and it kind of goes from there. There's like a murder mystery element, and so we see like the golden age glitz of Hollywood and how her grandmother went from the costumes department all the way up to a leading actress. And so yeah, it goes from there of like current day and the past as well. Really enjoyed it, 4 stars. Then I picked up Untamed by MJ Hendricks. So this one I saw recommended from some friends on Instagram. So this one I gave 3.5/4 stars to. So this one is the first book in a series by this author, and this one gives like Western cowboy vibes. I picked it up because it has romantic suspense elements. It also has a family rivalry, a ranch setting. It has forced proximity. It has that like good girl, bad boy vibe. And it's a little bit forbidden as well because the heroine was dating the hero's brother in high school, so like they were each other's first loves. And so it's actually her romance with the hero, who is her ex's older brother, as well as he's recently out of prison for killing her uncle for reasons which are explained in the story. And so it kind of goes from there, where he comes out and he has this like massive hatred for her entire family, and he can't believe that she's working now at his family's ranch. He assumes she's still dating his brother, which she is not, but she works at his family's ranch, and she's kind of like the housekeeper as well as the cook as well. She's also best friends with his sister, and she's very ingrained in his family's life. So he is out of prison, and then he sees her there, and it kind of goes from there because he's really pulled to her. He also has some trauma and has some nightmares, and so he realizes when she's around, it like calms him down and he can sleep. So he kind of makes a deal with her and is like, hey, I will pay you extra if you sleep in my bed with me every night, or like a certain amount of nights of the week, so I can get some rest and like just sleep in my bed next to me. And so it kind of goes from there, where he's really pulled to her but tries to like pull back because of who her family is, as well as her past relationship with his brother. And it goes from there. There's like romantic suspense elements as well. So yeah, there were moments in here I enjoyed. It's a little bit unhinged. I feel like at times there was maybe a little bit too much going on, so I feel like that could have been maybe pulled back a bit. So yeah, 3.5/4 stars. It was a fun time overall. All right, next I read The Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst. So this was Tori and I's book club pick for September. So we kind of decided to switch it up for September and read a kind of cozy fantasy, very like fall book instead, which we both picked this book up at Steamy Lit together. And so we decided to give it a try. So I love the purple edges, and this really, really cute cover is honestly what got both of us to pick up this book. And so we decided to read a kind of cozy fantasy for fall instead for our book club in September. And so that's why we did the historical fiction readathon, so that we were still reading historical fictions, but maybe just not for the book club pick. But anyways, long story short, this one I gave 3.5/4 stars to. So this is very much a cozy, kind of like whimsical fantasy setting. It's a very low angst, very chill, just very cozy vibes. Like there isn't a lot to the fantasy or the world building, like none of that is there. I kind of went in expecting this for a cozy fantasy, just very much like slice of life coziness. So for what it was, I really enjoyed it and thought it was really cute. And here basically we're following the main character, who is a librarian, and there is like this whole rebellion going on at the times. And so the library is on fire, and so she decides to grab as many spell books that she can, which is what her like department is at the library, what she's supposed to be looking after. And so she grabs all the spell books she can and ends up going in a boat with her assistant Kaz, which is an adorable sentient spider plant, which I absolutely loved and adored that character so much. And so she decides, you know what, we need to get on a boat, grab all the spell books we can, and take off to my family's home on this little island that I grew up on. And so they take off to go there and like rescue all the spell books. And so it kind of goes from there with them getting there, and the house that she was left is like dilapidated. They have to fix it up. I had a good time with it for the cozy fantasy vibes of it all. I also really love in books and stories and movies, TV shows, like anything in general, I love when characters are kind of like left a dilapidated house that they have to like fix up or renovate or things like that. And so I don't know, it had that little moment in there, which I loved as well. So I was here for it and gave it 4 stars. I thought it was really cute. All right, next up I had an ALC of Someone You Deserve by Harlow James. So this one just came out at the beginning of October, and this one I gave 3.5 stars to. So this is a small town, single mom setting where she is a widow as well, and the hero was her late husband's friend as well as her brother's best friend. And so he is a part of the heroine and her children's lives since they've lost her husband a couple years ago, and he has always been into the heroine as well, so it kind of has some pining going on. This one I enjoyed. I really liked the setup and those tropes especially, so that's why I decided to give it a go, and it was a good time. This was my first from the author, but I would read more from them in the future. So yeah, 3.5/4 stars for me. All right, then I was just on a roll with ALCs this last week of the month, so I jumped into an ALC that I had for Darn It All by Evie Mitchell. This one comes out in October, so it's coming up soon, and this one I gave 4 stars to. This one, the hero and the heroine are best friends, and they end up having to fake date because the hero ends up signing up the heroine for this like fashion design competition reality show, but basically he didn't read the fine print, and it's a couples season, and so he needs to fake date her and be on the show with her, and so it kind of goes from there with them on this like fashion reality kind of competition show. This one was just so adorable and fun. It's also very steamy. I love the hero in here and how his energy is just trying to do everything he can for the heroine. He brings her little gifts all the time. I also just always love the representation we get from this author. So in this one, we have demisexual rep, we have bi rep, we have a lower leg amputee, which is the hero. We get to see like anxiety, panic attacks. The heroine in here, I believe she's Japanese. And so yeah, I just really enjoyed this one and gave it 4 stars. All right, so this is another one that was a total cover buy / cover lust when I saw this one all over Instagram. So this is Wolf by Paisley Hope. So this one I had to get the cover because it is absolutely stunning. This is the same artist who did the cover for Bourbon and Lies, which was one of my favorite reads of August, and I'm just obsessed with this like vintage, very cool vibe for the covers. I hope this artist continues to do more romance covers because I am obsessed, and so I had a good time with this book. I gave it 4 stars. I will say this book is very unhinged and dark, but I was kind of here for it in the moment and was just entertained by it all. So this is a dark MC romance. It has opposites tracked where the heroine is more of a good girl and the hero is a bad boy. He's the president of his MC. So basically here it starts off with the heroine. She loses her job, she loses her boyfriend, she loses her place to live, and so she has to move back to her small town, and that is where the hero and his whole MC live as well. And so she ends up running into one of her childhood best friends, and her best friend is engaged, about to be married to one of the other MC members. So she invites her to all of her like wedding festivities, and that's when the heroine runs into the hero and kind of gets pulled into this MC world. The hero in here is one of those who's like never been with the same girl twice. He's just kind of like a one-night stand kind of guy who gets what he needs when he needs it, and then he doesn't have relationships. But with the heroine, he wants to change for her and wants her so badly. So they definitely have that like possessiveness and obsession over each other, and just like I said, kind of unhinged at times, but like entertaining. So I had a good time with this one and gave it 4 stars. Highly recommend checking it out. So then I had an ALC of Secret Love by Willow Astor, and this one I gave 4 stars to. I feel like this series is really fun. This author I feel like has only ever been 4 stars for me. I don't think I've rated anything higher, so I'm always waiting for one that I'm like super in love with, but so far haven't gotten there yet. But anyways, this one comes out in October, and I had a really good time with it. I really love this whole setup for the series. We follow all single dads, and they're all friends, and so this one, the hero is a football player. He's also a single dad to his 3 daughters, and so the heroine is new in town, and she is the substitute teacher for one of his daughters. She's also the dance teacher for some of his daughters as well, so she's very much in his life. This one I really enjoyed how the hero had a good relationship with his ex-wife, who he co-parents with, and then we get to see the heroine have relationships with his daughters as well. She's also helping with one of his daughters in particular for her dyslexia, and then we see how the hero is just very much like football and his daughters. That's all he's had time for, but he's very pulled to the heroine, and kind of they both want one another, but they also want to keep it a secret because she is his daughter's teacher. So it kind of goes from there. This author, like I said, they're just kind of like small town and very cute and very charming, and so that's why I enjoy their books. So yeah, 4 stars for me. Next I had an ALC of Sunlight by Devney Perry. So this is book 2 in the Haven River Ranch series, and this one I had really high expectations for because I loved Crossroads earlier this year. That one like blew me out of the water because the last few Devney Perry books had just been okay for me, but I used to love her books. And so Crossroads gave me like old Devaney vibes. So I was really excited for Sunlight, but this one, ooh, I don't know, it didn't really work for me. So this one I gave 3.5, maybe 4 stars. This one is set in a small town. It's accidental pregnancy, forced proximity. The hero, I think he's her boss as well. Like he co-owns the ranch with his brother and sister-in-law, who are the couple of Crossroads book 1. And so it's kind of like workplace because he's the heroine's boss as well, because she works at the ranch as well. This one I just honestly wasn't as invested in the characters. I feel like they never really pulled me in. I feel like there was a lot of additional plot points going on and kind of less focus on the couple, which I wanted to see more of. Basically in here, the heroine is working at the hero's family's ranch, and so she needs a place to stay, and so she's offered one of their like cabins on the property, which happens to be right across from his. So one night after a party, they end up hooking up, and so that leads to the accidental surprise pregnancy, which is in the synopsis as well. That's how this book is like advertised, so it's not like a surprise to the reader. Like I'm totally fine with surprise pregnancy stories. I feel like this author in particular has delivered on other ones in the past, but this one just didn't work for me completely. And I feel like that's maybe because of the couple and more of the focus being on additional plot lines in the story. But sadly, it was just okay for me. So yeah, 3.5 stars. I will also say the audiobook didn't really work for me. The hero's voice in particular, some of his moments just came off very like juvenile and kid-like. So I don't know, that kind of took me out at times. But anyways, this book is going to be on Kindle Unlimited with the read and listen feature because it's produced through Montlake, which is through Amazon. And so that, just keep that in mind, that it's going to be coming out on audio through KU as well. Comes out on October 15th, 3.5 stars for me. All right, so next I had an ARC and an ALC of A Pirate's Life for Tea by Rebecca Thorne. This one I had really high hopes for. It's sapphic, it's cozy fantasy, and I just kind of didn't like it. I feel like it was way too long and just kind of boring. And so, I don't know, I gave it 2 stars, maybe 2.5 stars. It just wasn't for me. So I don't know if it was the author's writing or what. It should have been really fun because it has like pirates and adventures and all the things, but I don't know. It was just kind of a bore for me, honestly. So yeah, 2 stars. All right, and then I picked up It Had to Be a Duke by Vivian Lorette. So again, this one I had really high hopes for because a lot of people said it was one of their favorite historical romances of last year. So it'd been on my TBR forever, and my library recently got the audio for it. So I decided to finally jump in. This is the first book in this author's The Liars Club series, which book 2 recently came out, but now I'm questioning if I should get to book 2 because this book, book 1, I gave 2 stars to. This one, like I said, I had only heard good things, so I was totally shocked that I didn't love it more than I did. Basically, this is a historical romance. It has a fake engagement set up, and I don't know, this one just did not work for me. I've read other books and series by this author in the past, and I feel like they've worked better for me before, so I don't know if it was just this book or what. So definitely let me know if you've read book 2, which recently came out, because I am wondering if I should get to it or not. This one, the hero and the heroine, I feel like they were both really annoying. Basically in here, the heroine at one point, to get out of a kind of bully situation, she tells somebody she's engaged. The first Duke name she can think of is the hero's, and so she just drops his name. And then later on, the hero and his grandmother find out about it, and so his grandmother's like, well, you can't just like say you're not engaged and like ruin this girl's reputation, as well as people will look kind of badly at you as well. And then he's also kind of desperate for a match around the same time as well, so he decides to go with it for a while. Like I said, I didn't like either of these characters, so I was not rooting for them. So yeah, 2 stars, sadly. Next up is When You Give a Lawyer a Kiss by Anne Einerson. So I had an arc of this one, and I really enjoyed this one. I love like all the books I picked up from this author, honestly. So this one I gave 4 stars to. Basically in here, it starts off with the heroine. She's on a first date. It's going terribly, so she decides to run away, and when she runs away, she ends up jumping into this tattoo shop to hide out. So she kind of has a moment with the tattoo artist in there. They kiss, and then they end up going their separate ways, which honestly I was a little confused because of the hero's name. I had to look it up because I was like, she's having massive chemistry with the tattoo artist, and that is not the hero's name on the synopsis. So I had to look it up, but then of course it kind of comes into play with the story where the heroine ends up running into the hero again later on and realizes that he is a tattoo artist by night, but a lawyer by day. And so he uses like a different name at both places, but it's the same guy. So she's a new paralegal at his firm / working on his team. And so now it's like a workplace, he's her boss type of situation. He is super pulled to her, which I love to see. So yeah, I had a fun time with this one for a novella. I love books from this author. So yeah, definitely check it out. All right, so then I decided to jump back into the Chanel Clinton books. So I picked up When We Left Cuba, which is book 2 in the Perez family series. This one I really enjoyed and gave 4 stars. So this book, we're following dual timeline with the same heroine. So we start off with like present day, and then we jump back to the 1960s when she had recently moved to Florida with her family after leaving Cuba. So this one is a spy espionage story, which doesn't always work for me, but this one I was just really invested in. So basically in here, the heroine, she grew up in Havana with her family. Her father was the sugar baron, and so she's very privileged. And with the political unrest in the country, as well as Fidel Castro taking over and kind of all of those things, her and her family left the country. And And so now she is set on revenge for her twin brother, and she wants to do whatever she can to get back at Castro and all of those people. And so she ends up working with the CIA, and she's kind of hired to infiltrate his inner circle. And like I said, she's on her own revenge plot as well. And so kind of goes from there. And then she ends up having this kind of like forbidden romance with an American senator as well. So I just really enjoyed this kind of like time frame. Like I said, it's November 1960, so it's an election year. We see all of that happening. We see JFK becoming president and some of his presidency. We also see the Bay of Pigs. So we see Cuban-American politics at the time and the Cold War gearing up and kind of all of those things. So I had a really good time with this one. I really love the author's writing. I really love this character. So yeah, 4 stars. All right, so I decided to end September with one that I was highly anticipating as well. And I feel like any that I was highly anticipating this month were kind of disappointments. And the ones that I picked up just like out of the blue or saw on Instagram worked for me more. So maybe there's something to that. But this one is Given Our History by Kristen Miller. This one I had really high hopes for. I love the cover. It was on like my 15 anticipated fall release video that I did recently. Second Chance, it sounded so good, like academia setting, but sadly didn't love it. Gave it 2, maybe 2.5 stars. This one, like I said, I was expecting to love it, and it was honestly kind of boring. I didn't love the characters. I didn't love their story. Basically in here, we're following the characters through a bunch of different timelines. So we see all the way back to like 17 years ago when they met as kind of children, and it kind of goes throughout their relationship over the years. So they were like friends for a while, and then like a little bit more, and then now it's been like a decade since they've talked after they had a falling out. So now the heroine is an assistant professor at a liberal arts college, like her dream job. She's up for tenure, and the hero ends up coming into her life again because he is like a visiting scholar for the fall semester at her college, and so they have to kind of like be around one another again, and it kind of goes from there. Like I said, honestly, the cover was the best thing about the book, so I don't know, 2.5 stars. All right, so those were all of my reads for September. Definitely let me know in the comments what books you loved in September. If you've read any of the books that I talked about, I'd love to know. If you're going to pick up any of the ones that were my favorites, definitely let me know that as well. So yeah, definitely a lot of books, kind of all over the place, honestly. So hopefully October books go better for me. We shall see. Like I said, let me know in the comments all the things that you read in September. If you had any favorites or any books that I should pick up, I'd love to know as well. And like I said, if you want to see more of my thoughts or full reviews on any of the books that I did talk about, I do have reviews for all of them on Goodreads, which I talk about the books even more. So if you want to see that, the link is in the description of the videos. If you'd rather leave me an emoji in the comments instead today to let me know that you watched this video, maybe leave me a motorcycle, since on Wolf, they're on his motorcycle. So do that. If you haven't done so yet, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my future videos, and I'll see you in my next one.